Andrew Clennell, my colleague, reported earlier about this gas plant in the Hunter. The Prime Minister said he'd build it if the private sector doesn't, or the government would. With this sort of policy, does it have international implications in terms of our relations, like with the United States and others, particularly with Joe Biden threatening things like carbon adjustment fees and quotas and so on countries who are not doing the right thing when it comes to the environment? Is that the sort of retaliation you could see for a gas-led recovery, as the government argues?
Well, when it comes to our trade and investment policy, we're going to be very proactive, we're going to be very principled, and where necessary, we're going to be patient. And when it comes to our principles, we obviously want to do our bit when it comes to reducing emissions globally. But in terms of those principles, what we don't want to see is countries putting carbon tariffs or such thing in place to achieve their goals. So we'll work with the Biden administration on how we go about emissions reduction. Angus Taylor has already had a phone call with John Kerry where they've had a very detailed discussion around these areas, and as of my understanding from reading it is they had a very detailed discussion around how technology can play a key role in emissions reduction. So I think what you'll see from us is a very proactive and very principled approach when it comes to these issues.
So, but are those international implications, like the fact that Biden's now in the White House and John Kerry is going to be the envoy for climate change and so on, are those things on the government's radar when it comes to this other message about a gas-led recovery? It just doesn't seem aligned to the changes internationally. Is the government aware of that?
Oh, look, we obviously are very aware of the need for us to engage with the Biden administration like we have with previous US administrations. I mean, we understand that we have to be active in the way that we engage, that we are very, go into great detail around what we're doing with regards to our emissions reduction agenda, and that's already started. I mean, Angus and John Kerry have already had a very long and detailed discussion on this, and you can expect to see a lot more detailed discussions right across the Biden administration, as you would expect with a new US administration from any Australian government. That's the approach we always take because obviously they're an absolutely key partner of us.
They certainly are the most important ally, but you've gone from a situation where I guess Donald Trump wasn't maybe not of like mind to the Morrison government, but certainly the Biden administration isn't. In one of his first few acts, he put a ban on fracking and oil extraction from federal land at the same time as our government is looking at possibly building a gas plant. There's quite a divergence there.
Look, I would beg to disagree. I think there's still a lot of gas exploration taking place in the US, and there's also a lot of gas drilling taking place. Obviously, they've made decisions around fracking, one form of how you go about doing that, and there's certain geographical areas where they've sought to overturn some of the Trump administration's decisions. But in terms of how we approach the Biden administration on emissions reduction on other areas, this will be one where we have very open and frank discussions. I think you're going to see a lot of like-mindedness in the approaches that we're taking. And look, I just know personally I'm looking forward to engaging with the US administration on the trade and investment front once the USTR has obviously been sworn in. And I know all my cabinet colleagues are looking forward to doing exactly the same with their counterparts in the Biden administration.
The FTA negotiations we've got with the EU, with the UK, again, it goes back to those views on climate, though, doesn't it, in terms of if you want to get a deal done as Trade Minister with the UK and with the EU, does there have to be a bit of wiggle room from the government when it comes to those issues? Because obviously the UK and the EU very much forward-leaning on the climate response.
Yeah, but look, so are we, Kieran, and the approach that we've taken internationally, our record stands better than most. As a previous diplomat who went to a COP in Buenos Aires, I can tell you Australia plays a leading role in seeking agreement and getting all countries to play their part in reducing emissions. And we'll continue to play that role. And not only do we play a role in getting countries to commit, but our record of then achieving those commitments is second to none. So I've got no problems whatsoever in engaging, whether it be with the Biden administration, with the EU or with the UK on this, because we can stand on our record more than most countries, and that's what we'll continue to do, and we'll continue to play a very proactive and principled role in whether it be with emissions reduction, whether it be on trade liberalisation, investment liberalisation, because our record as a nation is a very good one.
And on the trade liberalisation front, would you like to see Joe Biden? Do you think there's any prospect that President Biden will sign the US back onto the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the big regional deal, which the US initially was a part of under Obama, fell away subsequently?
Look, I think it would be in our national interest and in the US's national interest for them to rejoin the TPP, or the CPTPP as it's called now. I think that would be a really good outcome. Now, whether they're in a position to do so in the first 12 months of their administration, obviously that's up to them and they've got to make that decision themselves. But from an Australian point of view, I think it would be very welcome if we could get the US back engaged in the CPTPP.